Well, it's a pleasure now to be joined here on GCR by a man who has been a very successful coach throughout his basketball career, now working as an analyst with ESPN. And we didn't do the math. It's silly on our part. We know his brother-in-law quite well, and we never even thought about the connection that he might have had with Todd Monken earlier on this week. John Harbaugh told us all about it. Joining us now, the former head coach at Georgia, as well as Indiana, Marquette, etc. He is Tom Crean, and he is with us on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn in Baltimore. It's great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Sure, happy to do it. Great to be with you.
It's great to hear from you. Can you just take me through your relationship with Todd Monken and his family and how all that came about over the last couple of years? I know that, when you're working at the same place, you run into people, but the way that John described it the other day, it sounded like you all were pretty close.
Well, it all started because of John's sister and my wife, Joni, became good friends with Terry Monken. They had something in common as both being new people to Georgia. We'd been there for a year, but they built up a friendship along with one of my coach's wives, Kim McLean, and so they spent a lot of time together, and that's basically how I got to know Todd. I knew of Todd as a coach. I'd followed his career, but I didn't really get to know Todd outside of sports until got to know him on the level as a couple. And I think that was pretty cool because once you get around Todd, you just see the passion, you see the fire. I mean, you definitely can see it when you watch his offense.
Sure.
But when you get around him, you just really see it. But it was really, the other person that probably deserves an assist is Joni and John's dad, Jack, is a big fan of his and has spent a little time, obviously, with them playing against Jim the year and watching him this year. I think Jack was astounded by how good his offensive acumen was and what he was doing with the team. So really, it was just a matter of I couldn't tell John, nor really could Joni tell John all the intricacies of his offense, but could tell him what kind of person he is, what we saw. I mean, I still, to this day, I'm not sure I'll ever see maybe a better what he did. It's hard to even describe it. What he did with Stetson Bennett is absolutely incredible. And to go from a guy that was a walk-on fourth-string quarterback to be a two-time national champion and be the leader of his offense, and obviously that says a lot about what Stetson's drive is, but it also says a lot about what Todd's ability to make them better. But I think the biggest thing about Todd is not only the fire and the passion and the directness that he has, but it's the versatility, it's the flexibility of that offense. And he took great players and he took good players. And in the case of a Stetson Bennett, he took basically an unknown player.
Right.
And he meshed all those guys into one of the great offenses in college football the last 2 years.
Well, that's all we needed to know, Coach. No, I mean, it all sounds great, man. It all sounds incredible. Knowing John the way that you do, the relationship that you guys have as family, did you, like, when the wheels start turning, right, when maybe Joni mentions, hey, what do you think about Todd, do you think at all about what that relationship would look like and why it might be a particularly good fit with him and with John?
Sure, because our loyalty's to John. I mean, that's family. I mean, that's where our loyalty is, whether it's John, whether it's Jim. And I think over a period of time and conversations with John and especially with Joni, I mean, she would always brag about the Monkens. I mean, we've had other football friends. Willie Taggart is like a Harbaugh. I mean, he's as much a Harbaugh as anybody else because of his background with Joni's dad and with Jim recruiting him and all those type of things. And so, there's certain things that just outweigh it. So you're never going to tell somebody in your family. I mean, I don't want to recommend people I don't know very well to strangers, let alone tell somebody in my family something that I don't think is true. So I think that the fact that it was an easy for Joni and probably then once I was asked, it was easy for me to talk about what I saw from that view, and obviously we weren't there this year to see it. But Joni, still obviously keeps in touch with Terry, and I hit Todd here and there on different things. But, I mean, all you got to do is watch it on the screen to see how it works. What I think it brings John is I think it just brings another dose of energy into that organization. I think it brings complete flexibility. He's got an understanding of all the different aspects of offense that you could possibly want to run. I think what he did a phenomenal job of at Georgia is not only taking that talent that he had, but building a system around that talent that brought the most out of the quarterback. Now you're walking into a situation with one of the most dynamic players in the NFL, and certainly one of the best quarterbacks to go with a lot of really good skill players. I think it'll be like a candy store in there when you look at the tight ends and you look at what they could potentially add in a draft or free agency with receivers and just building on it. And I think that's going to bring an energy to the entire place, and I think John's excited about that.
He is Tom Crean. He is with us here on Glenn Clark Radio talking about someone he knows well, Todd Monken, and obviously someone he knows even better in John Harbaugh and that marriage now here in Baltimore. Coach, obviously it's different sport to sport, but there's something that all coaches know. It's leadership. It's, that role. Knowing what you know about Todd as a person, can you tell me more about what he brings as a leader and as someone that is going to be working with these guys on a day-to-day basis?
Well, first off, he's been a head coach. And when you've been a head coach, John and I have this discussion a lot, right? Like when you've been a head coach and now you're in a position, it can go the wrong way, right? Like you can all of a sudden, when you go into a position where after you've been a head coach, you can come in, well, you want to prove that your way works, or maybe you're not as locked in. John's been very fortunate to have guys that have never been like that, right? And at least not in the most recent future. He's had guys that were really locked into making the Ravens better. And I think that's exactly what you're going to have with Todd. He's been a head coach, so he knows what that seat's like. He knows what those decisions are like. But he's also been a highly successful coordinator. And, I think at the end of the day, John obviously knew who Todd was. This wasn't some quality control assistant back in the video room that no one had ever heard of him. This is one of the top offensive coordinators in the game, and he'd had NFL success. I mean, look what he did in Cleveland. He had success in Tampa. So, I mean, he knows what he's doing. I think what happened at Georgia is he was able to take an offense that was a certain way, which was plenty good enough, but it wasn't extraordinary, and it wasn't record-setting, and it wasn't national championship maybe level, and that's what he put in there. And I think because that system is so strong of the way he has flexibility, I think that's what's going to serve him so well in the NFL. I think he's a risk taker, but it's not risk based on a wish list. It's risk based on what he knows. I think he is a decisive leader. I think I don't think there's going to be any issue with clarity. I don't think there's going to be any issue with this is what he wants. I don't think there's going to be any issue with energy. And I don't think there's going to be any issue with accountability. I think those are all things that stand out in his leadership to me.
Do you have a sense, Tom, just, you're around John a lot, and you see what's driving him this deep into his career, having already won a Super Bowl, but the ability to allow someone to be that guy, to lead that group, right, to not meddle, to not get in the way. Do you feel like it's important for someone like Todd that he knew he was coming somewhere where that wasn't going to be the case with his head coach?
Well, the bottom line is this, and I didn't give Todd this advice, but I would give him this advice. I'd give anybody this advice working with John. You need to communicate with him. John is a communicator. John is not, let me go sit in the office and let everybody do their job and I'll see the product on Sunday. John has conversations. John is a management by wandering around guy. John is going to go to different meetings and pop in. John is going to sit in the lunchroom or in training camp, and he's going to sit with a diverse group of people. It could be his players. It could be the film guys. It could be analytics. It could be his coordinators. John is a hands-on, communicative, energetic. There's very few surprises. Where you're going to have a problem with John, okay, is if you don't want to communicate. And I don't mean this with Todd. I mean this with anybody in general, because I think communication is obviously one of Todd's strengths, or John wouldn't have hired him. You're going to have a problem with John if you try to silo, if you are not a listener, okay, if you don't have empathy for others, and if you don't have a real desire to get to know your players for more than what they just do between the lines. And I think John has done a masterful job of having a energetic, I don't want to say collegial mindset, but it's almost like it's his business, but you'd be hard-pressed to find people that haven't played for John that still don't have a very strong affinity with him. I'll give you a great example. I ran into Sean Landetta in an airport.
Wow.
And we flew on the same plane coming back to Tampa because I live in Florida and he was coming on a visit. He hadn't played for John since he was with the Philadelphia Eagles. Right. His reverence for John was still so strong. It blew me away. Like, and they haven't probably even seen each other in a long time. But see, John's like that. And fortunately for me, my father-in-law was like that. Jim is like that. You know, when you are close with them, there's a strong bond. And I think when you try to do it on your own, that's when you get in trouble with John. Or when you don't keep him informed or you don't communicate with him, that's when you get in trouble with John.
It's fascinating. But Sean Landetta, of course, Towson football legend, so we still have a lot of affinity for him up this way. Coach, if I could just, I've got you. There are legendary stories about the competitive nature of the Harbaughs, and you're around them a lot. I'm wondering, when you guys get together, like, what is it? We've heard stories about basketball. I don't know if maybe like racquetball. What is the thing where maybe you guys are the most competitive when you all get together for like a family event?
Well, it's not really me as much as Jim and John and Joni are very unique. I'll just leave it at those three. They are really unique in the way Joni's really got the attributes of both of them, right? And there's a huge competitiveness. I see it in my wife when she's playing tennis now, and it's never recreation for her when she's playing tennis, like she's trying to win it. And so I don't know if it would be, it's not like there's an organization of all these activities that everyone's going to try to win in. It's just random things. And it could be an argument. It could be trivia. It could be, you name it. And I think when people are around them, you feel it. So it makes the competitive juices kick in to the point where you're almost looking for things to compete in. But I think the biggest, I don't think there is any one major area. I think they're all three highly competitive people that are very smart. And I always say I got the best looking one.
Right. Yeah, sure.
But the bottom line is, I mean, Super Bowl week was something else, but the last possession of the Super Bowl was so excruciatingly hard for Joni's mom and dad, for Joni, for me, my kids, I'm sure for Sarah, Jim's wife, Ingrid, John's wife. But the competition level between those two, it was never going to shut off, right? And you walk out of there and one won and one lost, and you feel happy for one and you're just devastated for the other. But at the end of the day, that was pure competition to the two of them.
I'm imagining.
And
Coach, I'm like imagining them suggesting that everybody plays like Pictionary, and you just being like, I'm going to leave you guys at it. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and have this one. Maybe I'll go get a cup of coffee or something right now.
Yeah. You got to, if you've planned out a competition or if one breaks out, you got to clear the schedule because it's not going to be over. It's really not going to be over till I'm not even sure it's over if Jim wins. He may want to win again. Same thing with John.
That's awesome.
John wants to win as bad as Jim. He just sometimes does it with a little bit more of a smile on his face.
Okay, Jim's a little bit more hardcore.
Yeah. But they're both going to. They're both like that. I mean, it's just beautiful in the family.
That's awesome.
And I see it in our own children, and I'm sure they see it in their own children. I mean, Allison Harbaughs is the same way, playing lacrosse at Notre Dame. I mean, I've seen her compete, watching her. I mean, it's the same thing. So it's a blessing, really, truly, to be in that family and to have three children in that family that get to be a part of that, to go along with everybody else.
That's so cool. Coach, before I let you go, if I could, just to, we're really excited about what Kevin Willard has done up here at Maryland. I wonder you're doing studio work and games for ESPN. I get they're probably not going to be like a Final Four team or something like that, but how excited should we be about the foundation that someone has been able to lay without much in the way of recruiting in this first year, with a very thin roster, not a very good three-point shooting team, and yet here they are, jockeying and battling for maybe as high as the 3 or the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament.
Well, here's my history with Kevin Willard. I've known him since he was in the 9th grade. I worked for his father, Ralph Willard, at Western Kentucky.
Oh, that's right.
I went to work for him in 1990. So not only did I know Kevin growing up, but I also got a chance to coach him one year. So I guess I've known him since he's probably 15. And so my background with Kevin is one of it's almost like family. And I love Kevin Willard. I love the family. And I follow him closely. And I thought he was just an absolute great fit. I mean, I had a lot of competition against Mark Turgeon when I was at Indiana and he was at Maryland. And so you go into Maryland and you just realize it's one of the great home court advantages in college basketball that not everybody understands how great it is. And it's very, very hard to win in there. And they have a tremendous student section when people come in there. The fans are on you. They're tough. They're well educated on basketball. There's no doubt about that, and they're into it, right? So it was a great fit for him. What he did is he's developed the players that are there. They went in and got Jameer Young, who I think is the key to their team, because when he plays well and when he's at a different level, and he's playing at all three levels, meaning he's making threes, he's getting in the paint, making passes, and he can make his layups. He makes everybody better. And what I think you've seen now is they had the home success, they had some road struggles, but now they've grown out of that. And so I don't think there's any question that I'm not even sure where they're ranked right now, but if there are 14 teams in the country better than them, I don't know.
Wow.
I don't think there are.
Wow.
Right? I mean, I just think they're right in that ballpark.
Wow.
And they're that good. And I think he's going to build it because he can recruit, he can coach. And what Kevin has got that he gets from his father, and that I think he gets from being with Rick Pitino all those years, he's got a style of play that he has a conviction in, but he's also got a level of intelligence and awareness and flexibility to figure out a way to beat you on that given night. And I think that's there's so many coaches that they put their system ahead of everything else, and they're successful. You've got guys in the Hall of Fame that have done that.
Sure.
You know, those guys usually had a lot of talent too. But the bottom line is when you have not only a system, but when you have a flexibility and a cerebral type of spacing and awareness of the game that your players can adjust to based on who they're playing, then I think that gives you another edge. And I think Kevin Willard has that.
I know I said I'm letting you go, but you're so excited. Do you believe he can make this a championship caliber program again in the coming 5 or so years?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What Gary Williams did, when Gary Williams was in the finals and then when he won the next year, he had something that most other people didn't have. You know, obviously the guards got a lot of attention, but I say this all the time. It's one of the 3 biggest separators on who's going to win and who's not. He had 4 big guys, right? Like he had 4 bigs that you could go through. Like there were always things that Gary Williams had at Maryland that made him unique. Well, what he had was an incredible environment that people that cared about basketball, and that helped too. Right? Well, what that is there at Maryland. I've been in there when it's standing room only. I've been in there when it's so loud you can't hear yourself thinking it's coming down to the last possession. And I thought Mark did a really good job there. What Kevin has got is all those attributes. He's got an energy with it. He's got a desire to win. He's got a background in winning. He's come up. There's never been, Kevin Willard is not one of those guys that was ever handed anything. And he played at Western Kentucky. He played at Pitt when we were there. He worked his way up, starting out as an intern, basically with Rick Pitino with the Boston Celtics, to working his way up to being a right-hand man for him. He started at Iona. I mean, you name it. He's come up that way. So when you've got that kind of blue-collar work ethic, that when you've got conviction of what you believe in, you can do anything you want. And Maryland is one of the I would say it's even better than one of the top 10 jobs in the country. Wow. I'd put it in the top 7 or 8 with any job in the country. And I think because of those things that I just mentioned, now you have a coach in there that has that flexibility again to do those type of things. I mean, Mark had some great teams and came really close. What they've got to do, though, what the bottom line is, they've got to support him through this. Hopefully the NIL is where it's got to be.
Sure.
He can recruit the area.
Yep.
The area is so strong. But at the same time, he can go a lot of different places, and that league is really hard. It is really hard to win in that league, and I think if people are patient with him as he builds it, I think he'll be fantastic. it would not shock me. It wouldn't shock me one iota if he's in the second weekend. I don't want to put it on him that he could be a Final Four team, but this year is so wide open. There's 15 to 20 teams that could be in the mix this year. I mean, if you said, "Hey, I'll take 4 teams and you can have the field," you could take any 4 teams you want, and I'd take the field.
I get it.
Right? I
just
think it's that wide open.
Yep.
And why not Maryland? I don't think there's any question he can do that.
Coach, you're about to be the most popular man in Baltimore with everything you just told us about Todd Monken and Kevin Willard. You're about to be the most loved man.
It's all truthful.
I really appreciate this. This is a wonderful conversation, Coach. Thank you for. Is there anything I can plug for you got coming up?
No, I'm fine. I'm enjoying what I'm doing and living in Florida and study a lot of basketball and I'm in the studio all weekend and then I've got a game and then I've been in the studio in championship week. No, I'm fine.
Awesome.
Just and taking it in and enjoying what I'm doing and as long as my energy comes from learning, and as long as I'm learning things every day, I'm good. So that's where I'm sitting right now.
Coach, the best to you and your family. Thank you so much for doing this.
Anytime. You're very welcome. Anytime.